Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome, and Happy New Year. We are back. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by Chris Lowe of On3 Sports. It's the RTI Lowdown here on Rocky Top Insider. We appreciate you watching, as always. If you're checking us out on YouTube, you're watching the Rocky Top Insider channel on YouTube. So make sure you like and subscribe there. Appreciate all the support you're giving us on the show. Also, if you're checking us out as a podcast, that's fantastic. Just make sure you download us. Make us one of your go-tos in your own podcast library. We're available wherever podcasts can be found. First off, though, let me say hello to my partner in crime here. Chris, it's been a while. How you doing, man? How were the holidays?
Yeah, well, it's great to be back after a few weeks off. A little bit of a hiatus there for the both of us, but no, on the road a lot, and good to be back, as I said, doing the RTI Lowdown. And it's right in the middle of the playoff. And it's I don't know that a lot of people would have had Indiana and Ole Miss, maybe not even Oregon at this point. But here we are with some not so usual suspects in the Final Four, Bob.
Yeah, no true first names that come to mind, blue bloods, right? None of them are around. Some really good teams, though. And we'll probably talk a little about that towards the end of the show as we close in on those, the Final Four, if you will, for the college football playoffs. It's a pretty interesting field. But we'll get going with our episode today. It's brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for great locally based insurance professionals to help you with your home, your car, your business coverage, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group. And as always, appreciate their partnership with us on the Lowdown. As far as an overview of today's show, I should say, there is a lot to catch up on. We've been away for a couple of weeks, and certainly right after Christmas, heading into New Year's, things got very hectic, including Tennessee football's season ending with a pretty resounding thud. And what does that mean? That ending, what's it underscore in terms of urgency level for the 2026 season? The transfer portal is open for business, and the process isn't for the faint of heart. You've got to move quickly or get left behind. We're seeing a lot of activity this weekend. We'll talk about that. And then Vol basketball opens up SEC play with a really tough opening matchup in Arkansas. And let's not kid ourselves, it won't get any easier from there, but we'll talk about it all. First off, though, topic A today, Tennessee football wraps up their 2025 season in an all too familiar fashion with a 30-28 loss to Illinois in the Music City Bowl. Now, we're not going to rehash this one too much in terms of details, namely because the game happened almost a week ago, but also because it was simply a brutal way to watch this season come to a close. Tennessee exhibited some of the traits we've been seeing emerge more often as this season went on. Costly penalties, lack of toughness on defense, poor clock management. Another bad loss in the Music City Bowl. The Vols are 1-3 in that Music City Bowl format, losing all three of those games in the past on walk-off field goals. Chris, Tennessee finishes the season at 8-5, including going 3-4 in their last 7 games. Not the ending that we were wanting to see.
I think any Vol fan, as you look to this season, you felt like coming off a playoff season that anything really less than another playoff year would be a disappointment. And maybe that's standards pretty high, but I think when you get to the playoff and you have a pretty good base coming back, Bob, you expect to get back there. I think that's realistic. But not only did Tennessee not get back there, as you point out, they really sort of melted down the stretch and did not play very good football. And as I look at this season, I think about how close Tennessee came in a few other games to winning. Georgia, they lost in overtime. And then yet, if you want to look at it the other way around, they could have easily lost at Mississippi State. They won that game in OT. So it's the SEC, I think, is what it is. And here's my advice for Vol fans. is it's going to become even more of that next year when you go to 9 conference games. Is it's going to the margin is going to be like this between being a team that can make the playoff and a team that has 4 or 5 losses. Tennessee on the wrong end of that margin this year, but they didn't play. To sum it up, they didn't play clean enough football. They didn't play consistent football the way you got to play in this league to get to the playoff, and you certainly got to finish the season. And that's Tennessee did not finish the season. And I saw for the first time, I won't say for the first time, but it looked like a team that lost its identity a little bit. It looked like a team that maybe confidence-wise wasn't where they needed to be as that season closed.
Right.
I think everyone knew there were going to be changes on the coaching staff, certainly on the team. That's the name of the game now. You've already seen sort of a revolving door of players getting in the portal, and you've got to be able to evolve and adapt. And now it's all about what does Tennessee do in the portal? Can they bring in not necessarily the best or most highly rated guys, Bob, but can they bring in the guys that fit and guys that are going to sort of buy into what they want to do? And then I think the quarterback situation, to me, going forward is the most fascinating part for Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to imagine, although I have to say I kind of found myself falling into this vortex a little bit after that Illinois game, and that is, there's all sorts of people talking about, is Josh Heupel on the hot seat going into next season? It's hard to say that when you think about the fact that he's one, I believe, of only 4 coaches that have won out of Power 4 conferences have won at least 8 games in 4 consecutive seasons. It's hard to believe. And he's one of them. And he's up there with some of the other names, the usual suspects like Kirby Smart and Kalen DeBoer. And I think Sark was the other one. And maybe one of 5. That might have been it, because I think Lane Kiffin might have been in that mix too. And so you look at that and it's like, it's not as bad as it seems. However, what you just said really resonates with me, that what we saw, that the last 7-game record too of 3-4, that says a lot, and I know they were playing some good teams, but they didn't beat a team, an FBS team with a winning record the entire season. And so going into next season, does another 5-loss season just make it okay and passable for Josh Heupel? I'm not so sure. That's and that's going to be tough next season, because like you said, 9-game SEC schedule, and our schedule is not like it was this season. It's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fan bases are probably asking that same question. Talk to the folks there in Columbia, South Carolina, ask them about their head coaching position. Hey, take a trip to Tuscaloosa right now, Bob, and see how they're feeling. And they got in the playoff and won a game in the playoff, how they're feeling. So I think it's just the nature of the beast in the SEC. And it's I don't think it's going to change with the money that coaches are making, the money that players are making, quite frankly.
Yeah.
The standard is going to be higher. The patience is going to be less as we go forward in college sports, not just in football, but in basketball too. And I think everyone that comes in to coach, if you transfer in somewhere and everyone knows you got a $2 or $3 million price tag as a quarterback or what have you, you got to know what you're signing up for. And I think the same goes for coaches. I agree with you. I think Josh Heupel has done a lot of heavy lifting to getting Tennessee's expectations back to where this team is nationally relevant. They did not play as well this year. 2 years ago, as I said, last year, they're in the playoff. The year before that, just okay. And I think the Orange Bowl success, winning that game and winning 11 games as early as he did in his career, maybe he was a little bit of a victim of his own success early.
Right.
But I also think people look, if you're a Tennessee fan and you're doling out a lot of money for the collective or buy season tickets, I think you look around a little bit and you say, well, gosh, look at what Lane Kiffin did at Ole Miss. No, Lane Kiffin's not Ole Miss's coach anymore, but look at the way he built that program. Consistently, that team gets in the playoffs. They've won 2 games. Look at what, in a different conference, albeit, but look what Kirk Cignetti has done at Indiana.
Yeah.
So Tennessee, there's always going to be a high standard at Tennessee. I do think when you look at the last 2 decades plus, though, we probably all, those of us who are getting up in age, I won't say you are, Bob, but I am. We still think back to that those glory years in the 90s and think, well, that's what it should be every year. Well, It's just not, and it hasn't been for a long time. And that's not to say Tennessee can't get back there and won't get back there, but it's still a pretty steep climb, and it gets harder when you add Oklahoma and you add Texas and you add a ninth conference game. You add the portal, you add NIL. You see how quickly teams are able to make up the gap now. Texas Tech and Indiana and Ole Miss, teams that weren't in that sort of group. Well, they're in that group now, and you've got to beat more than just Georgia and Florida and Alabama to make it through right now.
It's true. It's true. So that's, I think, a good jumping off point to say, as we try very hard to wash this past season, the way it finished, out of our hair, you shift your focus to 2026. And one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the level of urgency is ratcheted up. And I'm encouraged to see this because it is the name of the game now that Josh has made some big changes. Last time we did this show, Jim Knowles was joining the staff as the new defensive coordinator, replacing Tim Banks. Well, now he's filling out his staff. And the headliners there are Willie Martinez, Chop Harbin, both out. They're no longer part of this staff. Rodney Garner and William Inge are both retained in, I would say, somewhat their natural positions as defensive line coach and linebacker coach. But some key additions, Chris. Anthony Poindexter joins from Penn State as the co-defensive coordinator and will also coach the safeties. Andrew Jackson will be coming over from Penn State as well, coaching the Leo position. And then Michael Hunter from Ohio State, but having some Jim Knowles backstory, so to speak, he's coming in as the cornerbacks coach. So feels like quite an overhaul on the defensive side. Rodney Garner's a name that I think everybody was breathed a sigh of relief to hear he was sticking around. So that's good news. Feels like Inge is another one that that most people were positive on. Polarizing coaches, namely Willie Martinez going out. A lot of people felt he did a really good job, some not so much. Whatever the case may be, we're moving on from those two. And we've got some new guys coming in, which I would like to believe when we talk a little later about transfer portal needs and what we're targeting. Maybe some of those guys leaving Penn State and Michael Hunter from Ohio State, that might open the door for some potential additional changes with personnel too.
I mean, don't you have to have an Andrew Jackson on the staff if you're Tennessee?
Yes. I thought that was great.
Isn't that sort of a priority, Bob?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah,
maybe it's a good omen for the Vols too, to get an Andrew Jackson on the staff. The common denominator clearly, and we talked about this, I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that when Jim Knowles got this job, and it was part of the whole package, is he was going to be able to bring his guys in. This is really the first major overhaul, really the first overhaul period since Josh has been at Tennessee. And I'm a big believer, if you're going to bring in a coordinator, a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, you can't bring in just him. You got to let him have some hires.
Yeah.
And when you look at who he brought in, they all have a connection, or they've all worked with him or coached with him in some form or fashion. And I think that's, again, to me, you're just sort of swinging at air if you don't let your new coordinator bring in his guys. And I think I know that was the plan all along when Josh brought in Jim Knowles, that, hey, we're gonna revamp the defensive staff, and you go get who you think you need to come here and coach this football team, and then we'll put the pieces together to try to get better on defense. So I think the other noteworthy moving part of this is the strength staff. That Josh has made a change with his strength staff, and I think that's something that, when you look at football teams across the country and you talk to coaches and you talk to people who are intertwined and immersed in these staffs, they'll tell you the strength coach and the head coach have to be in lockstep. There has to be an absolute, complete connection there between those two about what they're trying to accomplish, what they're doing, the way they want to play. So I think that's probably, Bob, as noteworthy as any, that there's been a change there in the strength staff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up. I omitted that one and almost forgot about it, frankly. But you're right. That is a key piece. We've all talked about it, too, because we think some of that has a direct correlation with some of the injuries that these players have sustained, et cetera. So I think that's a very, very big move. It's going to be interesting to see. And I'm also interested to see if there will be any staff changes on the offensive side of the ball. Not to say that we need a bunch of them, But at the same time, while we're going through that kind of house cleaning on the defensive side, it'll be interesting to see if anything happens on the offensive side of the football. But I do agree with you, too. We've talked about this. We had heard when Josh was going to replace Tim Banks that the new person was going to have some latitude to really kind of make some change. And it's clear that that's happening with Jim Knowles. And that, if nothing else, is pretty encouraging for me to see as well.
Yeah, well, listen, they got to get better on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
And Tennessee has proven, they proved under Tim Banks they could play championship playoff caliber defense. 2 years ago, they were lights out. I think we all have short memories that, you get the right pieces to the puzzle, i.e. players, and you coach them the right way, and guys respond and are coachable. Then I go back to Josh's quote a few years ago. Hey, don't forget, this is the home to Reggie White. This is the home to Al Wilson, to Eric Berry. We played a lot of good defense around here at Tennessee, his quote, and we're going to continue to play. Well, you got to play. I mean, you look at right now who's winning and how they're winning. Indiana's defense, people want to know my dad was asking, what's the magic? What's the secret? Well, the secret is watch them play on defense and watch how they tackle, how they gang tackle, watch how they get off the line of scrimmage, watch their guys on the back end and the way they hawk the football. You've got to play that type of defense. And certainly Jim Knowles will be tasked with doing that. But, Bob, I can't emphasize enough, man, what's going on right now, and I'm talking about the portal, is to me more important than any coaching change that Josh is going to make. They got to go out and find guys who are, and I call them finishers, I call them disruptors, guys who change the course of games with big hits, with big plays, that eliminate drives by getting to the quarterback, guys on the back end, with interceptions and returns for touchdowns, flipping field position. Tennessee needs more of those guys. They need to be better at linebacker. Yeah. They got to get better at safety, and they got to find guys on the edge that could go get the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on all of that, man. And we're going to come back around to that because, as you said, the transfer portal, it's going to be a key talking point in the coming days. But the long-lasting effect of those portal moves it's going to be so significant. So we'll talk about that a little later in the show. But for the moment, let's pivot to Tennessee basketball. As Tennessee tipped off SEC play in Fayetteville with a tough matchup against number 18 Arkansas on Saturday. We're going to talk about the Vols. Also, we have a special guest joining us, VFL Dane Bradshaw from the SEC Network will be joining us in just about 10 minutes, roughly, to talk more about not just Tennessee, but the SEC at large and some of the upcoming opponents and what he sees. So we're looking forward to that. But specifically, Tennessee at Arkansas on Saturday, Bud Walton Arena, electric atmosphere, the only game in college basketball on that Saturday with two ranked teams facing each other. And the Vols got off to a very strong start in this one, jumping out to an early 7-0 lead. John Calipari gets a timeout, calms the troops down, adjusts, and then, boy, this game was on from there. Chris, 7 straight points from Arkansas freshman Darius Acuff, even things up immediately. But I think also it sent a message of we knew Acuff was a really strong player, but he was going to be a handful this entire game, along with his fellow freshman Malik Thomas. The Hogs started to control this one, going up 37-36 at half, and it only grew from there. Arkansas goes on to win 86-75.
Every game that Tennessee has lost, of course, every game's been away from home.
Right.
There seems to be a little bit of a common denominator. They haven't finished games very well, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're up. Tennessee's up 1, I think, with about 9 minutes to play yesterday, holding their own.
Yep.
As you say, tough place to play, matching baskets, and then the next 5 minutes, it got away from them. Arkansas had some big shots, they had some big threes, but Tennessee didn't play. When you start looking at winning basketball, you can't turn the basketball over as many times as they did yesterday. You've got to not only you got to get to the free throw line, especially on the road, but you got to make them. You think, what were they, 7 for 21? That's not winning basketball. Yeah. When you miss that many free throws, you turn the basketball over that many times, Your guys that are scorers have to be score. They can't be scorers in the first half, or they can't be sporadic scores. They got to score for you when you're on the road, and maybe a team does make a couple threes, and you need guys to make baskets. That's when you need, the Gillespies, the Aments to score for you. And right now, Tennessee seems pretty limited. And much more so on the road, it seems to show up, which I don't know that that's atypical of a lot of teams.
Right.
But, certainly in this league, as you go forward, you got to have more than two guys. And now the young freshmen, I think there's a lot to be excited about, what's going on across, with him. But you've got to have your main guys be your main guys when you need them most.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this game, there were some things that were pretty uncharacteristic for Tennessee in my mind in this game. First of all, we talked about those two freshmen from Arkansas. Acuff and Thomas ended up combining for 47 points. I mean, they were just outstanding. Arkansas as a team also, I don't think I've seen a number like this in a long time. Arkansas as a team had 10 blocked shots in this game. It felt like they were blocking our shots left and right. So that was uncharacteristic in some regards. And then Tennessee losing the battle of the glass. It was close, but they usually, that's their calling card. They dominate. They're the top ranked offensive rebounding team in the country, and they were beaten on the glass by Arkansas. They also, as you mentioned, Chris, 14 turnovers against only 13 assists. That's not going to win basketball games for you. But the one that is most characteristic as of late is the free throw shooting that you talked about. They ended up rallying a little bit, Chris, but they shot 52% from the line in this game, and they were outscored 29-12 by Arkansas on free throws. And it's a bummer to me because Tennessee shoots 50% from the field, which on the road, it's a pretty good clip. Mm-hmm. But they could not overcome the free throw woes. Listen to this number, CeeLo. The Vols are shooting on the season 68% from the line, and that ranks them 283rd nationally in free throw shooting percentage.
Yeah, that's, again, that's confidence. That's walking to the line. And we could sit here all day and talk about making free throws in practice. And if you've ever gone to watch Tennessee practice, it's something all teams work on. And you got to learn to shoot free throws, obviously, when you're tired. It's one thing to go shoot 100, to go to dinner, hang out in your room and watch TV and then go shoot 100 free throws in the gym. That's you're not really simulating what it's like to shoot free throws in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game when you're tired. You play defense the way you got to play if you're going to play for Rick Barnes. And it's just being able to walk to the line with confidence and do it and simulate that the best way you can in practice outside of games. And a lot of that's, it's leadership, it's confidence, it's having that feeling that, I'm going to go get this done. And for whatever reason, Tennessee hasn't been good at that, that's a problem because you start getting into the postseason, late in the season, the SEC, these games, Bob, are separated oftentimes by, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points.
Right.
And you get into the last 2 minutes of the game, and if you can't make free throws, you're really swimming upstream. And I think that's something that's got to change in a hurry. And guys that have the ball in their hands the most, the Gillespies, the Boswells, the Aments, a lot of times your big guys don't shoot as well. But you take Kerry, for instance. You go inside to him, and he's shown a penchant for scoring and getting fouled, drawing fouls. But you know what? If he's not going to make free throws, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it feels like teams are starting to figure that out a little bit. So all of that to say, again, this is a tough game. This was number 18 versus number 19th in terms of national rankings. And there were some bright spots for Tennessee in this game, though. Most notably, freshman Amari Evans, who was, listen to this, 7 of 7 from the field, 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 steals in 22 minutes in his last 4 games since we've last talked. Evans has averaged 11 points, 3 boards, and about a steal and a half per game. And I'd say it's safe to put it out there that he has earned a consistent role in the Rick Barnes lineup right now.
Well, and Rick, from the get-go when they recruited him, he loved his defense.
Yeah.
And felt like his length and his ability to play defense and defend and play in their, their team system of defense, not only just being able to defend on the ball, but the way they want their guys to play from a team standpoint. But I think his offensive game maybe has been better than anybody would have thought. And if he's going to continue to make baskets, and play with that kind of confidence on the offensive end, his minutes are going to go way up, and they should go way up.
Yeah,
because he's been a productive player for them, and I think you want that competition because you find out how your other guys react when you got a new kid like that comes in and he's playing hard, he's playing with confidence. Rick, starts to increase his minutes. Well, how do the other guys who've been getting those minutes respond? You hope they respond the right way, and they compete that much harder, and you continue to have the kind of depth that you're going to need. I know when you lose your opener in a conference and seemingly with under 10 minutes to play, you have a chance to win, and then all of a sudden you blink and the other team's up by 10 points. For fans, that's it's hard to digest that.
It is.
But I also don't think one game on the road, and Arkansas is going to be a lot of teams there.
Yeah.
And Bud Walton. Let's see how this team responds. Let's see if they can clean up some of these things. I still think we haven't come close. I know it's easy to beat up on him because he's making a ton of cash, but I don't think we've come close to seeing Nate Ament's best. Not even close. And I think it's out there.
Yeah.
I know Rick Barnes believes that, Bob. It's out there. So let's see what we can get, what Tennessee can get from him going forward, because they're going to need it. He is a guy that's capable of being every night an 18, 19, 20-point scorer, 7, 8, 9 rebound, and to do that without turning the basketball over.
Yeah, I think he just and I saw some of it yesterday in the second half, is just getting a little more assertive. There's moments where he does it. Yesterday he had 13 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, only shot 5 of 11 from the line. Had a few moments where he looked a little overwhelmed. Again, I think those are things that will course correct over time. But it goes without saying, to your point, we need to get more from Nate Ament if the Vols are going to be a factor in the SEC and in March. I really believe that. But I have all the confidence in the world in talking with Coach Polinsky and Rick and others that we're going to get there. They believe in this kid, and you can see it. It's just evening it out and being consistent.
That's good. We got a special guest, I believe. Speaking of Vol hoopsters from days gone by, I love to say that because I like to make him feel old. And that's our good friend Dane Bradshaw joining us. Dane, I know you've been on the road covering you're at Missouri, Florida last night. But first question for you, I know we've only one game into the conference season. How do you think this season in the SEC will compare to last year?
Oh, it's impossible to match last year. I do think maybe given the hype of last year and knowing that the SEC has shown to be the best of the class in college basketball, maybe a little bit of disappointment. I think everybody realized, hey, you got to take a step back from last year. That can't necessarily be the expectation. But I think right now, just with the Lunardi stuff that you see, projected teams, still early. But here's the crazy thing. The SEC may have taken a step back from last year, but if you look at the top 16 remaining strength of schedule in the country, all 16 teams are in the SEC. Yeah. Purdue's 17th. So it's wild that the strength of schedule, and so the opportunities are still there. It's not quite as good last year where like every single night was a quad 1-win opportunity, but still extremely strong. And just maybe not as top heavy. I think you're still trying to see who's going to emerge as potential Final Four type team.
Dane, how do you assess in this day and age with the money that's being paid and the hype, a kid like Nate Ament comes in, the expectations are out the roof. Now we're one game in to the SEC schedule. For someone who played the game at a high level, who sees teams all over the country, what do you look for in this kid, and what do you think needs to happen for him the rest of the way to be the kind of player Tennessee's going to need him to be if they're going to be a deep run type team in the postseason?
Yeah, I think patience is going to continue to be key. But as you guys know, I mean, before we know it, we're going to blink and it's going to be February, and you're going to say, all right, well, we got to see a new and improved, better version if Tennessee is going to go further. It's certainly not the same lineup, but it kind of reminds me with the Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson, when those guys were top freshmen and they were, they were good, not great. And, it was around February. It's like, all right, but uh, we got to really start relying on these guys. But the good thing is he's got some weapons around him. And I listened briefly before I joined, and you're exactly right. If you talk to anybody that's ever played a good Arkansas team, they'll say Bud Walton Arena is a tougher place to play than Rupp Arena. And I think Tennessee saw some of that. So I think also what created some, I shouldn't say create, but the expectations with Nate Ament. Rick Barnes is always very cautious about hyping anybody up or saying somebody, is really good, this and but he was so pleased in the offseason with Nate Ament and he was so coming in his compliments to him that, at least for me, that made me even raise the expectation for him, because I go, man, if he can make Rick happy, he can make anybody happy, right? And I think that was a little bit of it as well. And so, but it's going to be a physical SEC, as you know. I was calling a Florida Missouri game. They got an Ivy League transfer, Xavion Lee, who is a big time prospect, but the physicality of the league and the length, and it's an adjustment period, and there's several guys that are getting accustomed to it that are much older than Nate Ament.
Hey, Dane, appreciate you joining us, man. Always love your analysis and the job you do with SEC Network. Staying on this topic of Nate, and it's more widening the lens, and you brought up a really good point. We all on this call, we all know Coach Barnes well, and we saw it too. A lot of excitement, even from Rick, about Nate Ament. Do we think also that there was maybe a little bit of a kind of a, I don't know what you call maybe some of the collateral damage of this freshman class? I mean, we saw it yesterday in Fayetteville with Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas, two freshmen that they're ready, man. They're ready to play. Cameron Boozer, obviously, AJ DeBonsa. Nate's more of a work in progress, and I think that's the part that doesn't do him any favors in the eyes of the fan base, et cetera. And so I agree with you about your point of patience. That's going to be the thing. I have to preach it to myself. But can you recall a freshman class that is this loaded right now?
No, I really can't, and it's, in some ways, I've kind of enjoyed it, because so many of the freshmen, even though these are sensational freshmen, but with the extra COVID year and how old college basketball had gotten, and the transfers, is kind of nice to see. You know what? There's some really good freshmen out there that can dominate and make a huge impact, which you absolutely saw with those type of players. And here's the deal: it's a journey, as you guys know. But with Nate Ament, he maybe not an apples to apples comparison, but just because it's fresh on my mind, I covered Florida yesterday. Defending national champs, you know, that carries a weight, and they haven't won a lot of close games. They're different than they were last year, but in some ways, like, having some of those struggles early, I think allows you to grow as a team a little bit more under the radar as the season goes on, because the expectations have dropped somewhat significantly. And because of all the hype of all the other freshmen out there right now, I think it allows Nate to kind of say, and the people around him and everything else, to be like, all right, let's just take a step back. All the hype's around these other guys. I'm not a featured player on every single broadcast now. Let me just get better at my own pace. And you've got a veteran coaching staff that understands that. And this isn't a Ben Simmons situation down at LSU, several years ago, where, hey, Tennessee's hoping that this kid's going to take them to the promised land. Like, they have other pieces. They can be good even if he's not great. Now, can they be great if he's not great? You could certainly argue that. But I do think that takes a little bit of the pressure away.
Staying on Florida for a second, because, again, I watched a good portion of that game last night. You were on the call, and you just touched on it. They're 9-5, and there's some people saying, what's wrong with Florida? They have, those 5 losses have been by a total of 7. Like you said, they've been having trouble maybe closing out a few games, but I should also note that's against a murderer's row of opponents, right? I mean, Arizona, Duke, UConn, those are some of their losses. I think this team, and I think about it because Tennessee is going to be playing in Gainesville next Saturday. I know that rivalry brings back memories for you, man. I remember watching these games against Florida at the beginning of the Pearl era. I think Florida's going to be right there.
I do. I think they've got as good a chance as anybody to win the league. Because I don't think Alabama has truly separated themselves. I don't think Arkansas has. And Vanderbilt has been good, and they're undefeated. You have to give them credit, but I don't know that I'm ready to say it's Vanderbilt's league to lose. And Florida's right now they're about 3 or 4 percentage points away from being a completely different team. And
Yeah.
they've just really struggled to shoot the ball, and it's not just one guy. It's 1 through 5 really. And if they can find, they don't have to get hot. They just have to get average from 3. And if they can get average, they're winning those games you talked about.
Dan, I wonder, big picture question here. The game has changed so much. You're bringing in, gosh, 3, 4, 5, 6 new faces every year. What do you think is the hardest challenge now for a coach as he puts his new team together every year? I know you got to create brotherhood and bond in the locker room, but as you travel around and watch these teams play and talk to coaches, what's the secret sauce there to be able to do that now?
Making sure it's not 7, 8, 9 new players. I think if you can have 4, 5, 6 new players and you've got 40% retention or so, then now you have a chance to build something. And that's something Rick Barnes has done just a sensational job of keeping covered Ole Miss a couple times, and they've got a ways to go. It's been a tough, slow start for them, and I think a lot of it is due to how few of players have returning. And so on paper, the analytics, and you put all the pieces together, and these staffs are small. It's all going until they all get on campus, and it can be really, really frustrating for some, and it's a guy that goes out there and rebounds and defends because we got so many mouths to feed right now. And to your point with the NIL stuff, also probably in the back of their minds, like, hey, we got a big investment in that kid. We need to be in that. And so I think there's just a number of things that have factored into it. But ultimately, the cream rises to the top, and that's why you continue to see so many of the great coaches in the game still have success despite the changes.
Hey, last question before we get you out the door here, Dane. Again, and this is just riffing a little bit, but the SEC champion, like last year, you talked about it, how just unbelievably tough the conference was, almost from top to bottom. It's going to be very good again this year. Not quite as tough as last year, it appears. But what do you think is out of an 18-game season? What do you think is the record that could win the regular season in the SEC? Is it 14-4, 13-5? Do you think it's better than that?
Great question. I think 14-4, you're definitely winning. 13-5, and you're probably going in that final week or final game with some work to do and hoping maybe somebody else loses or you're tying. But I do think it's we say it all the time with wide open. I don't know that it's wide open, and I'm not ready to say there's 8 teams that could win the league. I think it's probably more 4, but still, and yet I think you're looking at teams that can come out and become that 9th, 10th team in this NCAA tournament. And it's maybe a little bit boring to talk about, but look, Georgia's had a lot of success. They had a great home win against Auburn yesterday, even though
Yes,
Auburn's
sir.
not the same team they were a year ago. Georgia, LSU, Vanderbilt was picked to finish 11th in the league. And so you get some of those. Now, there are some trade-offs there. Mississippi State and Ole Miss are 2 teams that you used to think that they're going to the tournament. I certainly would have had them in. They have an uphill climb, so there's been some back and forth there in terms of And then you got Buzz Williams down at A&M, where after he left there, now you got Bucky McMillan. So that's year one. That was a team that you would expect to be in the tournament year in, year out. So there, you also have some turnover there. All that to say, I think 14-4 would win the league.
Well, Damian, we appreciate it. We know you're a road warrior now. You're on the rental cars and airplanes and hotels. We appreciate you taking a few minutes to spend with us as we sort of pivot from football to basketball season, although the playoffs are still there. But we appreciate your insight as always, and look forward to seeing you maybe at Thompson Bowling. I guess it's the Food City Center now to be right. We need to make sure we give the sponsor their due. But we look forward to seeing you, man, down the road, and we appreciate your insight
You got
tonight.
it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dane.
That's Dane Bradshaw, former Vol great. See him now on the SEC Network. ESPN does a terrific job calling games. And I remember talking to Dane when I covered him, thinking, one day he's going to be a great analyst because the way he breaks down the game, the way he sees the game, and was such a cerebral player, could see the whole court.
Yeah.
And, and you hear that now when you see him on TV pointing out things that, that aren't the obvious. I mean, it drives me crazy sometimes. I'm in the business, but people are constantly on TV. We're watching a game. It's not a radio broadcast. They're pointing out the obvious. And Dane is really good at telling you what somebody's trying to do, what they're trying to get, looking for parts of the game that, not just anybody would see, and yet does it in layman's terms, which I think is hard to do, Bob. If you played the game and know as much about it as he does, sometimes you talk over people's heads, and Dane doesn't do that. His ability to get his point across to anybody is really excellent.
No, I totally agree. And for me, it was just kind of a treat having him on because all I'll ever associate him with is that game in Thompson Bowling against Florida. I forget the year now, but it was Bruce Pearl's first year. And that's when we knew, at least I was there. I was there in attendance. And as I walked out, I was like, coming from Indiana, basketball means a lot to me. And it was like, man, we got a basketball program now. And he was a big part in that game, that entire season where everything turned around. And by and large, it's been nothing but uphill in a good way from there for this basketball program. So I always feel like Dane, in his own way, contributed a lot to that. Again, wasn't a guy who was going to score a bunch of points, but he did all those other things. I kind of think of Bishop Boswell and think of Dane Bradshaw in the same breath now, because it seems like Bishop is one of those guys too.
Yeah, Dane was a lot of fun to cover. He really was, and wasn't afraid to pick it himself. I always loved that about him.
Yeah.
He couldn't shoot, couldn't make free throws, which he was better at both of those than he gave himself credit for. But man, he could see the floor. And Bruce was so smart. When they were in the half court, they ran everything through Dane offensively. Mm-hmm. He was sort of their point forward at 6'3" or whatever he was. And they ran everything through him. And he's sort of the guy that made it go. But those teams were I thought they were the most fun to watch because none of that was really expected, in 2005 or whatever Bruce's first year. I remember being in Austin, Texas, that game where they went in a Rick Barnes coached Texas team, by the way, and they went in and absolutely torched Texas. With their press, their up and down play, and Jawan Smith and Chris Lofton hitting threes. And those teams were a lot of fun to watch play because I don't think any of us expected it. No.
I was skeptical even after that Texas game, but again, for me, at Florida that's where it changed for me. Well, that was fun. Hey, wanted to talk for a moment about our sponsor. They're the ones who help make this show possible all the time. That's the Tate Insurance Group. They are your local insurance team, and they are proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all, and show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about, and that's because this is where they live too. The Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. You can find out more by going to their website at tateinsurancegroup.com. Or you can call them. They'll be more than happy to talk to you and let you know about the services that they can offer. Their phone number is area code 865-862-8233. That's 865-862-8233, Tate Insurance Group. All right. That was nice. Had a little basketball course there, and now we're going back to football. It's like we're sampling food here, Chris. Of course, that's all that's been on my mind because that's all I've done over the holidays. I feel like I was proud of myself. I thought I gained probably about 15 pounds, but kind of ended up coming home from break like it was about the same. So somewhere along the line, I got lucky. But fall football. So as we talked briefly earlier in the show, the transfer portal officially opened for business. And there's already significant movement to speak of around college football. Lots been happening today. I was going to say, when I put my notes together earlier today, I was going to say not so much so far for our guys at Tennessee, but that's likely about to change. And man, it changed already. A couple big additions for the Vols on the defensive side of the football. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what we feel are the portal needs for the Vols. I think there are a lot of them. And Chris, I know you've been in your other job with On3. I'm sure you've been hearing some stuff today as far as activity that's going on.
Well, yeah, to sort of just repeat what we talked about earlier, I think number one is finding guys on defense that can get to the passer, and really disrupt things. And I know that's a priority. For Jim Knowles, for Josh Heupel, to find those guys that can end drives. I think quarterback too. I know that we still don't know about Aguilar. I don't know how realistic it is that he's going to get another year. And I think they like their two young kids at quarterback, but also don't think you want to go into next year playing a kid who's never played. And granted, McIntyre's been on campus for a year. I still think physically he needs to get bigger and stronger. So I think without question, Tennessee's combing the portal for a quarterback. And the one that's most intriguing, and Bama fans and Tennessee fans are going to sit up straight when I say this, is Ty Simpson. I do not believe Ty Simpson will be back at Alabama next year. I think he's gone. I think it's either he's going to the pros and going, entering the draft, or I think he's going to go into the portal. Now Ty's been around for a while. He's a pretty savvy kid. His dad, Jason's as a coach. So they're not going to do anything without talking to the right people and talking to people who know, I think most importantly, Bob, a Tennessee kid who I think was interested in coming to Tennessee. There was that transition between Pruitt and Heupel, so it was sort of a weird time. I think there were other times during his career at Alabama where he might have thought about transferring, and Tennessee was in his thoughts. It just didn't happen. But I think this time, if he doesn't decide to transfer, and I think the thing his decision in my mind will hinge on simply this. If he gets the kind of feedback from pro people that he is a first-round draft pick, I think he's gone. I think he'll go to the NFL. And you know what? He probably should. He got hit a lot this year. He took a lot of hits, got hit a lot, and this was his fourth year on campus. If he gets from NFL GM scouts, you're the third quarterback in the draft. We think you're going to go somewhere between 15 and 25. I think he's gone. If that feedback, Bob, is not that emphatic about, well, maybe you slide into the second round, then I think he's going to look seriously at transferring. And I think if he does, I think he lands at Tennessee. I think Oregon is the other school that I've heard the most about. But if he does transfer, I think you're going to see Ty Simpson as Tennessee's quarterback next year.
That's interesting because not a surprise, not the Ty Simpson part, but what I was going to say is not a surprise that there's a lot of movement already on the quarterback front. Just today, I think it was yesterday, Drew Mestamaker from North Texas announced he's going to be following his former head coach, who will now be his current head coach again at Oklahoma State. So he's going to be going to Oklahoma State. Josh Hoover from TCU today announces he's going to Indiana to succeed Fernando Mendoza. It seems like Sig's got quite a quarterback tree going on. Curtis Rourke was really good last year too. So now we've got Josh Hoover going there. Rocco Becht from Iowa State follows his coach to Penn State. There's still a couple names out there, Brendan Sorsby and Sam Levitt, who's probably the top get. But what's crazy is not so much that Sorsby is supposedly targeted to go to Texas Tech, but that Sam Levitt, who could pretty much pick his school. Right now, there's a lot of chatter that Kentucky is in the mix on Sam Levitt, which I did not see that one coming.
Well, hey, it's a different world. There's cash to be had, and there's, I think when you look at Kentucky, it's a new day at Kentucky.
Yeah.
With Will Stein coming in as their head football coach and his background offensively. I would not rule LSU out on Sorsby. He was just in Baton Rouge meeting with Lane Kiffin and that staff.
Yeah.
I know he's right there at the top, at or near the top of LSU's board in the portal. I don't know what's going to happen with Trinidad Chambliss. Does he get another year? He's filed a waiver. That's going to be fascinating too, to see what he does. And the more the season goes on, and it's a reminder to me, just when you think you got it figured out, Bob, when you start trying to evaluate quarterbacks, and I'm on here yapping my jaws back in August about Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway and Garrett Nussmeier and Arch Manning. Well, you know what? Trinidad Chambliss kicked all their butts this year. So did Gunnar Stockton. Those kids, I mean, if the two of us were walking through West Town Mall right now and those kids walked down out of one of the stores, we would never in a million years think they were SEC top 10 Heisman candidates. But all they do is they get out there and they play.
Yeah.
They make plays, they run around, they're fearless, they take big hits. Quarterback's all about making plays, getting your teammates around you to believe in you. And when it's fourth and short, when you got to have something in the fourth quarter, getting it done. And it's just a reminder to me that watching this entire season, those two in particular, and Pavi is the same way. Pavi's got a mouth on him. I know he turns a lot of people off, but here's another. He's even shorter than the other two.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, I'm going to remember this. So I want you to pop me upside the head next year when we start talking about quarterbacks and say, remember what you said last year and what happened? It's how you play. It's how you play and not how big you are or your measurables or how much hype you have.
Nah, there's no doubt about it. You're right. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to monitor. We have, like I said, areas of need just about anywhere you look because we've had guys leave. At running back, we still have Deshaun Bishop, but we could use more depth there.
Mm-hmm.
In the defensive backfield, lots needed in this area. And today we got our first commitment at Tennessee, and that's Quay Moss, the portal transfer from Kansas State.
And they've had success there, Bob, on the back end. They've done a nice job, Tennessee has, of getting guys in the portal who've been impact players. It stunk that, McCoy couldn't play this year. He was hurt.
Right.
But you look at what they did with him and Colton Hood in the portal.
Yeah.
So if this kid is anywhere close to being as impactful as those two kids were, then they've done their homework.
Yeah. Yeah. We've lost a bunch at the edge. And, of course, Chaz Coleman is a name that pops up with Tennessee supposedly as one of the finalists for him with – wait for it, LSU. He's a Penn State transfer, so you can see the through lines there. It'd be great to get him. And crazy to say, we need better at kicker, and we saw Max Gilbert enter the portal, and there are kickers who are out there looking for new schools. So that's going to be interesting to see too. One thing I wanted to share with you, though, that I found interesting as we talk about the Final Four teams, CeeLo, that still are playing in the college football playoffs. And you talked about this because this underscores the importance of going out and really navigating this portal season as best as possible. 24/7 did a composite rank of the top, 25 teams in terms of was for last year, their portal haul, if you will. 3 of the 4 teams in the Final Four actually all 4 are there, but 3 of those Final Four teams, Miami, Ole Miss, and Indiana, all had 20 or more players through the portal on their roster. And it's no secret. We see it certainly with Indiana, and we see it with Miami. And, Lane Kiffin was top of the list with 30 signees out of the portal last year. It's very different than what Tennessee has done. Tennessee's been averaging per year about 7 portal signees per year. I think that's going to have to change. I think you said it earlier. The complexion of college football is very, very different. And you got to have the balance. You want to have great high school classes coming in, and Tennessee's doing a good job there. But you've got to get the complementary players, and that's about also assessing skill, how how they can fit within the team roster, the team culture, all of that. A very, very critical offseason, CeeLo.
Well, and I think David Sanders is a good example of what you want to go and get in the high school ranks. A kid that was highly, highly rated. A kid that, physically you look at him and he looks pretty close to being ready to play. Now, there are very few ready-made players in college football, but it's pretty darn close. And he got his shot this year. You could tell him watching him play, he's going to be a really good player. But if you're going to do it at a high level and you're going to get to the semifinals of the playoff, you got to surround a kid like that. And I'm just using him as an example.
Yeah.
With more veteran guys. You want maybe a guy on the other tackle who's played 2 or 3 years, and has been a productive player. Maybe a guard beside him who's played. And I think, quarterback, I think more than ever, you better have somebody in there, quarterback, who's played or been around several years. The days of sliding in a true freshman or even a kid who's only been on campus for 2 years, look around. Show me a place that's winning at a high level now where that's the case. You just don't see it. Julian Sayin is probably the exception, but you know what? He's throwing to a guy named Jeremiah Smith and a guy named Cornell State. He's got pros around him. So that's why, if it is a Ty Simpson or if it's somebody else, not that either one of these young kids Tennessee has at quarterback won't be able to play or by any stretch of the imagination they're disappointed in them. But I just think you've got to let those guys develop, play a little bit, and then slide them in when they get their chance. And I think the stat was of the Power 4 teams this year, Bob, the starting quarterbacks, I think it was over 50% had transferred at some point.
Yeah.
You go back through the national champions. Joey Burrow was a transfer. Fernando, Indiana won it. Mendoza was the Heisman Trophy winner. He was a transfer. And, Will Howard at Ohio State last year. I think that's going to become not the exception, but the norm.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, last thing, just to put a very quick bow on things. College football playoffs down to the Final Four, like we mentioned, and it's very different in its appearance than we've seen in years past. 2 schools in that Final Four that have virtually no history at this level in Indiana and Ole Miss. So the changing of the guard is underway in college football. The world in college football is getting a little flatter. Those 2 games are happening on Thursday and Friday night. So when we're together next weekend, who are we going to be talking about matching up for the national title in your mind?
Yeah, I know maybe everyone's saying it's going to end, they're not luck, but their run's going to end. They can't keep doing it with all the dysfunction of coaches going back and forth. But, man, I'm riding with Ole Miss until somebody beats them.
Yeah.
They've been as good a story as we've seen in college football in a long time this year and are playing with a ton of confidence. I was in that locker room with those kids after the game working on stories. And I'm telling you, Bob, it's not like, hey, are we really here? They expect to win the whole thing. Yeah. So I'm going to go Ole Miss in that game. That's the game I'll be at, head out to Phoenix tomorrow. And I think in the other game, I've seen Indiana, and I'm a believer. I've continued to be a believer in the way they play and how disciplined, how sound, how balanced they are. I just don't see a weakness on their football team. I just don't see one. So I think we're looking at Indiana, Ole Miss, the 2 teams that everyone picked back in August to be in the national championship game.
Yeah, right. I think defense is going to be the telling tale. It feels like, to me, I love the Ole Miss story, but the way Miami's playing on defense, Oregon's playing great defense now. It feels like that James Madison game might have woken them up in the first round. But Indiana's playing good defense too. I think it's going to be Indiana and Miami in that final game, which, again, like you said, blows my mind that I'm even saying that. But it's cool. I have a lot of friends who are Indiana University alums, and they are taking it all in as they should. So it should be fun. So that's going to do it for this one, though, today. Special thanks to our guest, VFL Dane Bradshaw. As always, many thanks to our great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. And thank you for watching and listening. We tell you, as always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube on the Rocky Top Insider channel. If you're podcasting with us, make sure you download it. We're available wherever you're finding your podcasts or listening to your podcasts. And we are back at it. Active off season for Vol football. SEC basketball, we'll be reporting on that because not only the Florida game we talked about, but the Vols play Texas in Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center on Tuesday night of this week. And CeeLo, don't look now, but it's only 6 weeks until we begin the Josh Elander era of Tennessee baseball.
Cold baseball. There's nothing like 37-degree
Yes.
opening day baseball, Bob. And I'll have you know that I did not miss or break any of my 2 a.m. curfews on Bourbon Street last week. I just want to get that out there.
Good. Yeah, we don't need you getting out of control down there. That's never good for anyone. So I'm happy to hear that, man. Hey, buddy, I'm glad we're back at it. Always enjoy doing this with you, and looking forward to 2026.
Same here. See you next week, Bob.
Absolutely. And for all of you, we'll see you next week. Keep it locked in on Rocky Top Insider for the best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. And we'll see you next time on the RTI Lowdown.